that photography with the world has gotten better. And so I don't know that we're necessarily taking more pictures, but we're definitely sharing and telling the story of what we can see from the ISS. You know, we have such a unique vantage point looking down on Earth and looking down on weather systems, the aurora, different thunderstorms, different types of natural disasters, you know, landslides, fires, all sorts of things. And we can really help inform how we do disaster relief. We can help inform, you know, how thunderstorms interact with the atmosphere just based on photography. And so, you know, I felt a really deep sense of duty to just share our view with the world while we were up there. And I think that's innate in every single one of us, I think. And so there are plenty of cameras up there, plenty of lenses. Don Pettit did an amazing amount of work to get our photography to where it is, and then to share that knowledge that we can then pass on to future crews as well.
Okay, great. Anne, anything to add?
She nailed it. Yeah, I think photography was really fun, and I think it's one of the ways that we can communicate just how magic it is. I think everybody on Earth right now, when you can give them a perspective of where we are, the scale of where we are, both in how big our Earth is, but also how small it is and how we're really all in it together. I think if we can give people those moments, and I know we rely on media, like you all here, to tell that story, because I think that's an important story to tell. So we can hand you the pictures, but if you guys can share those far and wide, it'd be great.
Definitely. Okay, before we hop back into our phone bridge, I just want to remind everyone who is dialed in to press *1 to jump into our question queue and *2 to take yourself back out. And with that, I will pass it over to Robert Perlman with Collect Space.
Hi, Rob Perlman with Collect Space. A request and a question. First, a number of our readers asked if there were any clear views of your zero-G indicator, the origami crane. If you took photos of Droog while on station, or if you can take photographs of it now on the ground, could you share those on social media? And then the question, sort of a follow-up to the last one, to Nicole, is about the Sprite, or rather the gigantic jet that you caught while photographing lightning storms. Was that something you saw happen live through the viewfinder, or was it while reviewing a time-lapse sequence? And if live, can you set the scene? Did you immediately recognize what you were seeing? Did you call over your other crewmates? What was that moment like?
Yeah, we definitely have pictures of Droog, so we will share that for sure. Yeah, I can't believe we haven't done that already. Yeah. So yeah, that's an easy one. Yes, of course we will do that. Droog spent the entire mission with us up there, and he kind of hung out in the lab with us, so you could float by him every day. And yeah, so this was just another technique and another skill that I learned from Don. You know, you have to. Taking great pictures is about planning and timing and execution. And so, you know, you get a feel for where the largest thunderstorms are, you do the research, and you kind of pay attention to weather systems. And so I knew that there was going to be a pretty big weather system in that area. I knew it was going to be a great pass over, you know, Mexico and the US, and wanted to get some really great pictures at night. Nighttime photography became one of my favorite things, but then also the thunderstorms are the most brilliant there as well. So you have to pay attention to the weather systems, know where the higher likelihood of seeing the transient luminous events are, and then setting the camera up. So I set the camera up and started a time lapse, and then I think I had to go do like a science experiment or some other maintenance task that day. So I set an alarm on my iPad, ran over, got the time lapse all set up the way that I wanted it to, and then started it. And then later that day was reviewing the pictures. And we have a shared folder on board the International Space Station that we named Holy Wow. And I was like, I got a Holy Wow picture. And so actually the Axiom 4 crew was there as well, so there were 8 of us crowded around a laptop looking at this picture, and I, you know, I knew it was a great picture, but I had no idea how phenomenal that picture was. You know, I had caught a couple of Sprites and a couple of Blue Jets and things like that, and you know, every time you're just more fascinated and more inspired to try to capture these things and really see how thunderstorms can interact with the atmosphere hundreds of kilometers above Earth. And again, it's a unique view that we only have. So I actually figured out that if you pay enough attention, you can play the time lapse back, and you can kind of see a bright flash. And so that's kind of that informs which of the 2,000 pictures the chunk of 2,000 pictures that I'm gonna go look at and find the picture that caught the Sprite. So it's something that you can't see with the naked eye, and so it's only in post-processing and review that you can actually find those pictures.
All right, we have another question in the room. Go ahead.
Richard Two with the Post newspaper. A question for all of you. Out of the myriad of experiments that you conducted, both technologically speaking and medical, which ones I guess, maybe resonated the most with you and maybe was the most meaningful to each of you?
I'll jump in. I've talked about it before, but I think one of the really cool things was the protein crystals, and part of it was because my last mission, it was kind of early on determining whether we could grow protein crystals on orbit. And then if you fast forward 6 years, we are growing lots of protein crystals on orbit and bringing them back to scientists who can use it. And one of the researchers told me this has accelerated Parkinson's research by years. And Keytruda, the drug Keytruda, this was another beneficiary of it, the space station research. And when you have friends and family who are impacted by cancer and they use Keytruda and you're going, holy cow, this would not have been possible 5 years ago. This treatment would not have been possible if you had been diagnosed 5 years ago. All of a sudden you get goosebumps and you're like, man, it's a really good thing that we have space station. So those two really stick out to me as pretty big underlines for the last 5 years.
Yeah, I think to piggyback on that, the ring shear drop experiment that I explained earlier has very similar effects and very similar positive influence on both Earth and as we venture out into the universe. Then one of the other ones resonated for me because my alma mater had a part in it. So the Air Force Academy was working with rhodium and looking at tomato plants and how they react under microgravity in different areas of radiation. So they actually flew on the FROM mission as well to see, higher up into the outside of the atmosphere what that radiation difference looks like on plants. And it's also important to look at plants and food as we continue to grow our distance that we move away from the Earth. Resupply is going to be a huge problem that we have to solve, along with food and water and reclamation. And so it's a small part of how we're going to get onto Mars eventually.
One of my favorite experiments is called the ELF, electrostatic levitation furnace. And there are 3 reasons I like it, because the first one is the Japanese experiment, and the second one is I majored in materials science in my university, and the third one is so my first flight was in 2016, and I worked on the first initial checkout of that experiment, and it's kind of still working, and it had a lot of minor or major updates. So it's upgraded until now, and so I was really looking forward to working on that experiment again this time. And it was such a cool experiment that we can levitate a sample by using an electrostatic force. So instead of building a furnace with a heavy metal, and we can use a laser to heat it up until like 2,000 or 3,000 degrees Celsius to get a characteristics data at such high temperature. So it was very, very cool experiment that could be super beneficial to produce any kind of new materials on the ground.
Okay, we have another question in the room.
Hi there. I'm James Dowling Healy, West Hartford Community Interactive. I'm wondering, after your time in space, what pieces of equipment you absolutely think we need on longer duration space flight? X-ray, ultrasound. I know we'd love to have an MRI, but I don't think it's anywhere near small enough. So anything that you think we should bring would be, I'd love to hear your insights on that.
My initial feedback is the exercise equipment, and it's a hard one because it takes up a lot of space, and so when you have smaller spacecraft, having large exercise equipment is difficult. But as we go through the last week or week and a half, and I'm getting scans on my bones, and I'm getting scans on my muscle, and I've put on muscle, and I have not lost bones. This was not happening 23 years ago, 24 years ago when we first started flying long duration missions. And when I got in the suit last week and I didn't collapse into a pile on the ground, I actually picked up moon rocks. Like, we need to pick up moon rocks when we get to the moon. And so I think that the exercise countermeasures are absolutely critical for longer duration. And especially, I think we've really hit having the 3 that we have, the exercise bike, the treadmill where you can really weight yourself, and then the advanced resistive exercise device, ARED, where you can put more than your body weight onto your bones. That's really what keeps your bones strong. Your bones are only strong as they need to be. And so I think those 3 are critical.
I would say the ability to manufacture. We talked about the lack of cargo vehicles, right? The lack of ability to just resupply. And so I think that our ability to 3D print tools or to come up with new ideas or create things that we might find that we need when we get further away. I think that's going to be really crucial. Both, we've had a biological 3D printer on board, but then also just metal or other substances as well.
I think network connectivity with Earth is very important in terms of psychological support for astronauts. The biggest difference between my two space flights is, I think, connectivity. So this time we have a lot of good connection on a kind of internet. So that made a huge difference on our psychological kind of wellness, and we can connect with our friends, our families all the time very easily. So going to the moon or Mars, it's going to be super challenging because we feel we are away from our home, our families, and that kind of connectivity will make our expedition much easier, I believe.
All right, jumping back into social media, Women in the Air on X asks, question for both Anne and Nicole. Was your spacewalk the highlight of your mission? And Nicole, how did Anne help you on your first EVA?
Oh man, absolutely. People ask me what my favorite day in space was, and I think the spacewalk day was that. It's an amazing show of teamwork and accomplishment. We have an entire ground team that helped us prep. We prepped for over a month on board. Talk and Johnny were our IV crew members, so the ones who stayed inside, but they were the ones who got us suited up and out the door that morning. Our morning started at 6 a.m. when Ann and I are on oxygen masks, and Talk and Johnny were up before that, getting everything ready and making sure every single thing was ready to go. And so we went into that spacewalk completely calm, cool, collected, and trusting that they were going to take care of everything. So we were able to focus once we got into the hatch or into the airlock and close the hatch, at noon that day. And so I think that then during the spacewalk, we had a few changes, and it was a pretty dynamic spacewalk in terms of the game plan and having to change the game plan real time. And it was a true testament to Deanna Trujillo, the flight director, and her team on how they were able to manage those changes, get us safely back inside, and also achieve all of the objectives that day. And then I think my favorite part of that whole day is when the hatch was closed and Talk grabbed me out and started to get me out of the suit, because it's a long day and you're tired and your crewmate's going to take care of you. And so I think, for sure that was the highlight of the mission for me, I think.
Yeah, and I think they asked about helping out. Nicole helped me, I think, just as much as I would have helped her. And that's the same as, when we're in the pool training for these, the same experience I had on the last EVAs. I think it's easy sometimes because years pass in between these major events, and we think this person's an expert, or we've flown this vehicle, this vehicle's proven, and you go, actually, it's only flown 10 times. Or you must be an expert at spacewalking. Actually, I've only done it twice, and now 3 times. And so, and every spacewalk is different, and you encounter different challenges. And you're flying with and working with the most proficient people that you've worked with, and nobody shows up to spacewalk day going, "Oh yeah, I already have this figured out." It's actually like, "Hey, I'm gonna rely on you with my life, and rely on you with my life, and you can rely on me, vice versa." And so each spacewalk day is pretty significant, but it's also, I think it really, to me, signifies in spaceflight, it's hard to become an expert. Right? You have to do something a lot of different times in order to really be like, hey, I got this. And spaceflight is very humbling. The second you say, hey, I got this, it's gonna remind you that you don't have it all figured out.
Sorry, I'll just follow up on the second part of that. Anne is an amazing leader and an amazing human, and she provided a lot of advice ahead of time, but then also like the calm leadership out the door as well was impressive, right? And like I said, it was a pretty dynamic day, and I was never in a spot where I questioned what was going on, because we talked a lot, we prepped a lot together. You get a certain amount of time scheduled for you to prep, and then we prepped outside of that, and every astronaut's going to do that, but I walked into that spacewalk with whole confidence based on Anne's leadership. So,
incredible. Thank you both. Sue Moji on X asks if there's anything that y'all learned that you didn't expect to on station. Nicole, as a first-time flyer, or for you, Anne and Talk, as non-rookies?
I can go first. I think that it was fascinating to me to watch how our bodies adapt. And I think that, if we were on board the space station right now, I'd probably flip upside down just to prove the point, right? Because it became totally normal to talk to somebody on a wall or float through a module and somebody's running on the wall or working out on the wall or upside down, hanging like a bat from the ceiling. And it takes a little while, but your brain starts to figure it out and remap those neural pathways, and everything just becomes normal and nominal. And it's pretty fascinating to watch how quickly the brain adapts to space. And then coming home, the first day trying to remember how to walk, like everything is heavy. And now 10 days later, we're all running, jogging, and mostly have our balance back, right? And it's amazing to watch the brain remember all of that again. And it completely ignored your vestibular system for 5 months, and then 10 days later, it's like, oh yeah, we can do this again. So it's been pretty fascinating to watch the body adapt.
So, for me, being the commander of the Expedition 73 Part A was something completely new to me. I never had such an experience to command such an international team, so that was a great experience for me. I learned a lot through the experience. And each person has different sets of skills and also background, also cultural background. So it was super interesting to see those differences and being the commander of such an international team. So no matter where we are going in the future, it will be definitely an international effort. So I hope that experience helps me to get there when I get a chance to do that. So really appreciate that opportunity.
Yeah, and I think we all learned a lot from Talk's leadership style, the calm, confident. He really set the tone up on board, and I know that we're forever going to be thankful for that. One of the fun things that I was kind of reminded of on Space Station, we have a little bit of a culture in the way that we share information. And I always say, there's kind of something unique about living in a closed system. Where information flow it kind of makes me laugh. Somebody will just say, hey, and they'll give you some random piece of information. And in 5 days, that little piece of information, you're like, I need that information right now. And I would equate it to if I was driving into work today and I saw a divot in the road and I just walked over to you and I'm like, hey, there's a divot on the road on NASA Parkway. You'd be like, why are you telling me this? I'm probably not going to run into it. But up on Space Station, because it's a closed system, every little thing that happens to you, it's going to happen to somebody else also. And so you're constantly sharing this information. And I can't describe how cool it is to work with a group of people in an environment where everybody wakes up and trying to make not just themselves successful, but everybody else successful. And so as soon as you run into one of those little pieces of information, you pass it on. We're still talking to the crew on board right now because we're kind of making sure they get the rest of the handover. And I think information flows is pretty neat up there. And we could do well on Earth to implement more of that, of just like what do I know and who else needs to know this to make their life a little easier.
Okay. Next question is on our phone bridge from Ryan Keton with NASA Spaceflight.
Hi, thanks for doing this. Fingers crossed all going well. In 6 months, 4 of your colleagues will be flying around the moon. I'm just wondering, first of all, what is it like to be able to serve with the agency during this kind of pivotal time period in human spaceflight? And was there anything you conducted on your expedition that is, in particular, going to be assisting Artemis 2? Thank you.
Yeah, for me, working and getting to be part of this mission, be part of the NASA mission right now is absolutely special. And we've talked about it amongst our crew. We've talked about it with the teams. But NASA's mission we've done great things during times of history where the political situation or the world situation may dictate that maybe this isn't the best time to do things. But when you look back at those times, that's what you're proud to tell your grandkids. That's what we're proud of that time. When we think about the 60s, we think about the moon landing. And when you really put yourself in the shoes of somebody living through the 60s, was that the most important and most stressful thing that they woke up feeling every day? It wasn't. There's a lot going on. But our country and our international partners, we can do hard things and we can do multiple things at once. And, waking up and getting to be part of a mission where we believe in humanity, we believe in the goodness of international partnerships. We see people and we say, hey, what can you bring to the mission? And we look out there and we say, what else is out there? Let's go there together. Just that innate human desire to explore and to do something together. That's what we get to be part of. And it's like, this is something that we're going to be able to be proud to tell our grandkids that we were doing in 2025. And so I think it's a great time to be working with this agency.
Okay, jumping back into our social media questions, and then I also have one myself. John Wolf on Instagram asks, how do you feel to get back home? And out of my own curiosity, how did it feel to splash down in the Pacific Ocean rather than the Gulf?
So I think, I don't think any of us have actually landed in the Atlantic or the Gulf, but Pacific Ocean, the landing felt okay, and then the waves felt much larger than they actually were. I think, at one point, I think it might have been Talkcast, like, are we in a tsunami right now? And I think all of us were like, yes, we are. It was a 3-foot wave, I think, is what we landed in. But it felt like, if you had asked me, I would have said 7. So, I think that, again, just adapting back to gravity, the entire way back through the atmosphere, we could feel the acceleration at 0.01 Gs. Every single one of us could start to feel the acceleration. And, at 0.2 Gs, I could start to feel my cheeks moving backwards, right? And so it's pretty, again, just fascinating that how well we adapt, and then at 1 G going up to 4.4 Gs felt like a lot. And so, we lived, for some of us, 30 to 40, 50 years on Earth at 1 G, and coming back, it's pretty heavy. So I think that the waves just added a little bit to that. And then getting onto the ship, we're, like Ann said, we're decommissioned, and just trying to move slowly through that and very quickly readapting back to life on Earth.
Yeah, I was really afraid of waves after splashdown, but it wasn't too bad. I was ready to grab my bags if needed, but luckily I didn't use it. So the splashdown is completely unique from my previous experience in Soyuz, but I enjoyed all single aspect of SpaceX Crew-10 return. It's more kind of everything happens more quickly and faster in a faster pace, but all system worked as planned. So I thought all systems were super kind of reliable, and splashdown is as hard as the landing in the Soyuz, but it was also a fun experience. And each single event, like a parachute opening, splashdown, we are excited, and we talked a lot in that capsule. Yeah, so we enjoyed it.
Yeah, we have 4 pilots that enjoy that kind of thing. The only thing I have to add is spot on for both of them. The only thing I'll add is one of the things that spaceflight does is that you really start to rely on your visual system for balance and orientation more than your vestibular system. In fact, your body kind of starts ignoring your vestibular cues to the point where when we get back, if we stand on one foot, tends to not be super challenging if your eyes are open. The minute you close your eyes, you're over on the side. And so when we land, the windows are charred, and I hadn't really thought about that. But when I was thinking about landing in the waves, and everything, we're all strapped down, so there's nothing there's nothing staying on the horizon that we can see, and so we're completely relying on the vestibular system to kind of sense where we are at that point. And it was a little bit more. It was a little more unsure of our exact orientation than I thought I might be at that point, but it was still fun.
Okay, Morgan on Instagram asks, what advice would you give to our younger generations who have dreams to go to space?
I got it. I'll do it. Man, I love to say, as long as you're willing to work hard and be a good team player, you can get anywhere in life. And so, find the things that fascinate you, find the things that you enjoy. I loved math growing up. And, as you heard, we've got scientists and engineers and doctors. And so find whatever you like to do and go get really good at it. Be willing to work really hard and be a good team player. Find a bunch of people that you love, take care of them, and you can really get anywhere you want in life.
Okay, I believe we have one final question here in the room with Mark. You go ahead.
Oh, thank you. Mark Carreau with Aviation Week and Space Technology. I believe some of the research that you were conducting was focused on cell generation, but also manufacturing tissues. human, potentially. And I just wonder if any of you have any thoughts looking to the future, whether there could be a capability to custom make organs for transplant using space labs.
Yeah, so I don't know that any of us have the in-depth knowledge that our NASA scientists would have to be able to answer that question, but I think even in just seeing the technology gains in the 5 years between my first and second flights has really opened my eyes to when we can get commercial companies involved in low Earth orbit. I don't think we can even comprehend the advances that they're going to make, because the creativity that they bring, even watching the private astronaut missions up there that just brought in things that maybe we hadn't thought of, or companies that kind of had access to space that didn't, and countries that had access to space that didn't before. I think it's going to be jaw-dropping, and I think that's one of the reasons why the mission of NASA to enable commercial spaceflight is so critical. It's maybe kind of like having kids. You know, you enable it, and then you just see what happens. And I think that I think commercial companies are going to be really interesting to watch over the next 10 years and what they bring to low Earth orbit.
Yep, well said. One more question actually in the room with Gina.
So an interesting statistic about the space station, Reed Weissman dropped last year at a Space Day event, that more than 1,100 tortillas were eaten in 2024 in the space station. The last cargo mission brought up, I think they said 630 tortillas. Mike Barrett last week just started laughing when I asked him how good was a tortilla in space. He says you play Frisbee with them. So how versatile is a tortilla? And you're eating it breakfast, lunch, and dinner?
Everybody's a little different, but yeah, we're all laughing because we definitely have had taco nights, and you know, it's your bread source, and it's also just a really easy way to put, you know, juicy food inside of them. It's nice to be able to hold something, but yeah, I think we've made breakfast tacos. We've been pretty creative with them. What are some fun things that we saw?
Yeah, we did quite a few tacos. The other things, crumbs, right? Crackers and other things are really crummy, and crumbs in space just get everywhere. And so tortillas are a really easy vehicle to use as well. So I think that's part of why we use so many tortillas up there. But man, I'm sad we missed the opportunity to throw them like frisbees.
We didn't play Frisbee.
Yeah.
I don't know that you'd want to eat them afterwards. We can't wash our hands very well up there. So I don't know if I want everybody's hands on a tortilla we're going to eat. Yeah. But I think we kept them as edible.
Okay, well, on that note, I believe that will conclude today's post-flight news conference. Before we do go, though, I do want to extend a huge thank you to our crew for joining us here today, and I just want to extend a huge welcome home to all of you. We're so glad to have you back here. To read more about Crew-10's mission at length, or to see what our other Expedition 73 members are doing currently on the orbiting laboratory, you can visit the Space Station blog on nasa.gov. And with that, for a final time, go Crew-10, go Expedition 73, and we'll see you all next time.
Welcome to the Crew-10 Post-splashdown news conference. Our event should begin momentarily. Today's conference is being recorded. If you have any objections, you may disconnect at this time. If you are also monitoring the event video, please mute the audio on your TV or computer and listen only to the audio from your phone. If you would like to ask a question during the Q&A portion of the briefing, please press *1 to be added to the queue. If you would like to withdraw your question, press *2. Do not use a speakerphone when you are asking your question.
Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us to discuss Crew-10's splashdown off the coast of California following their 5-month science expedition aboard the International Space Station. NASA astronauts Anne McClain and Nicole Ayers, as well as JAXA, or Japan Aerospace Exploration Agency astronaut Takuya Onishi and Roscosmos cosmonaut Kirill Peskov, splashed down this morning at 10:33 and are out of Dragon at this time. Joining us today to discuss Crew-10's splashdown are Steve Stitch, the manager of NASA's Commercial Crew Program, Dina Cantella, the deputy manager for NASA's International Space Station Program, Sarah Walker, director of Dragon Mission Management for SpaceX, and Kazuyushi Kawasaki, the associate director general of Space Exploration and the Innovation Hub Center for JAXA. So we will first start with some brief initial remarks from each of our briefers before opening it up for questions. We'll be taking questions on our phone bridge this afternoon, so if you are on the phone bridge, please press *1 to add your name to our queue and ask a question. And so we'll now begin with some opening comments from Steve.
Thanks, Sandra, and thanks for all of you for joining today and your interest in the Commercial Crew Program and human spaceflight. Of course, it's been a busy couple of weeks of very dynamic operations for the Commercial Crew Program, affecting the Crew-11 launch and the Crew-10 return. Really want to thank SpaceX, the ISS program, all the international partners for their great support, and in particular, with our West Coast landings, a lot of partnership between the FAA, the Coast Guard, the Navy, and the DoD. There's a lot of busy airspace around the Pacific area, and in particular, we had great coordination with the U.S. Navy and Air Force to deconflict a lot of activities on the West Coast for our first Pacific recovery for CCP. We could not have done it without the great partnership of all those teams. We are thrilled to have the crew back on Earth and safely on the ship. I suspect the next big activity will be to have them helo off the ship. We expect the helo to land in the next half hour or so, and the crew's doing well, and then they'll return to the FBO at Long Beach and then make their way back to Houston today. So the crew's doing well and the vehicle's doing well, so it's great to have them back. Overall, it was a very clean undocking yesterday, and then the phasing profile and the reentry and landing, the orbit burn today was all very nominal. The deorbit burn worked perfectly. This is the first time for the Commercial Crew Program we deorbited with the trunk, the fourth overall for SpaceX. And again, the whole activity of moving to the West Coast was really to protect the public and avoid leaving the trunk on orbit, and that's been working out very well for us. So the parachute performance was really good. We didn't really see anything off nominal with the drogue performance, the two drogues or the four main parachutes. The inflation of those two drogues was nominal. You might have seen on the video the drogues floating down after main parachute deploy with the door. That's very nominal. All four mains came out just fine and inflated as we expect. First time that we flew what we call an energy modulator system for us on Commercial Crew, a new one that modulates the energy as the drogues pull the mains out. That energy modulator worked fine. We'll recover those and look at those. I didn't copy, I assume SpaceX has recovered all the parachute hardware. Sarah will talk more about that. Overall, a very clean deorbit sequence today. That went well. We're getting used to the longer burn time with the trunk attached. It's about 18 minutes. The trunk separation was very nominal. The nose cone deploy was very nominal. About the only thing that was of interest is one of the water ballast pumps on landing didn't run. There's two redundant pumps that pump water into the vehicle post-landing. One of the two pumps didn't function. We think that was due to a power converter issue, and so we'll work for that as we turn this vehicle around. A lot of learning with the weather heading to the West Coast. There's a series of islands around our three landing sites. Of course, today we landed off the coast of San Diego. It's very fitting if I think back, 5 years ago and maybe a week, we landed Bob and Doug at Pensacola. And here we are pivoting to the West Coast 5 years later and landing off San Diego. We worked a lot of the weather the last few days. In particular, we watched the ceilings very carefully. The helicopter operations need to occur at a certain altitude, so we watched the ceilings and the winds. and we found a really good opportunity today, and it worked out. The winds were about 5 knots at landing, about 3-foot seas, maybe a little bigger swells than maybe what you're used to for a Gulf Coast landing or an Atlantic landing. And then, of course, the marine layer, you could see an overcast layer at about 1,000 feet that we worked through for the helicopter ops. One other operation that was performed today by SpaceX did a great job of managing the propellant for this longer burn. We didn't want to swap tanks during the deorbit burn, and so they have a very innovative GNC technique to manage propellant usage for a waste burn that we do before we execute the big deorbit burn. Overall, the mission went great. Glad to have the crew back. Now we'll turn our attention in the months ahead to the Crew-11 certification to get up to 8 months or 270 days to give us some operational flexibility on how we plan our missions into next year. Again, I want to thank the NASA team, the SpaceX team. SpaceX did a great job recovering the crew again on the West Coast. It was about a 2-year effort to get to this point, and I can't be more excited for the team. And now I'll turn it over to Dina.
All right. Well, thank you, Steve. And thank you to everyone who's joining us today. Like Steve, I was pretty happy to see the Crew-10 team back on Earth. They looked great, and they are doing great. Some trivia I was handed is that this was a 148-day mission. The crew spent 146 days on the International Space Station. They orbited the Earth 2,368 times and traveled over 63 million miles. So, after the Crew-11 team arrived at ISS last Saturday, they had a great handover with the Crew-10 guys, and Zena, Mike, Kimmy, and Oleg have kicked off their stay well. They're very prepared, and they're doing great on board. That handover time frame, the Crew-10 guys basically reviewed some things with the new Crew-11 guys on board, along with Johnny Kim, who's on board. For example, the emergency equipment locations, how the exercise equipment operates in great detail. They also had a change of command ceremony, and we transferred ISS command from Takoya Nushi to Sergei Rizikov. And I'll just note that Mike Fink is going to take over command of the station later in this increment when Sergei departs. So during the handover period, we also had 2 JAXA crew members on board, and it was really great to see that for the Japanese Space Agency. It was the first time since 2021. I wanted to take a moment to highlight some of what Crew-10 accomplished when they were on board. First there were 5 visiting vehicles that arrived during their stay there and 6 that departed. So that's a lot of packing and unpacking. But in terms of research, they completed over 200 experiments, and along the way, hundreds of hours of public engagement as well. And their research is going to help us in going to the moon and Mars, and some of it was targeting furthering our efforts to enable a commercial low Earth orbit industry. Some examples. My first example, they had a study that looked at radiation and gravity environments and how those affect plant growth. Specifically, there was some data that was gathered during their time frame, Crew-10 time frame, and they're going to compare that data with data from plants flown aboard the Polaris Dawn mission. That was a SpaceX mission which flew deeper into space, higher altitude than ISS does relative to the Earth. And they're going to study the difference that those conditions make in the different orbital altitudes. Another interesting experiment that Crew-10 did, they studied microgravity effects on the protein yield of microalgae. And so this is something that can help us with meat and dairy alternatives that can be sustainable during longer duration space missions. And then just this past week during handover, Nicole conducted an experiment called Sailing to the Stars. And in this one, she deployed some small sails out of cubes. She was inside the cabin, just trying to understand how sails deploy in microgravity. And that'll help us with future spacecraft and cube satellites. Also, if you recall, Ann and Nicole conducted a successful spacewalk back on May 1st. It was Nicole's first spacewalk and Ann's third. And during that spacewalk, they relocated a space station communications antenna. They installed brackets for future solar array upgrades, and they installed a power jumper. But looking ahead, station continues to be busy, and so hot on the heels of the crew arriving, CRS-33 is going to launch later this month. It's a cargo flight, and it has the new reboost capability associated with that. Then after that, in September, we've got Progress 91 undock and Progress 93 launch. Northrop Grumman has got a flight called NG-23 that's happening in September. It's a cargo flight. And we have JAXA's HTVX maiden flight in October. And all of these are very important cargo flights for us. Looking forward to all of them. And then our next crew exchange will be on a Soyuz, which is a Russian spacecraft, in late November and early December. So we will be celebrating 25 years of continuous human presence on board ISS in November. I really want to thank the amazing international ISS teams that ensure our continued safe operations. And I would like to thank the extremely dedicated SpaceX Commercial Crew Program, Coast Guard, FAA, Navy, all the teams that ensure that these Dragon crew rotation missions reliably get our crew to and from ISS to conduct our unique mission. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Sarah.
Thanks, Dina. Well, I'm excited to join everyone today in welcoming Dragon and Crew-10 safely home after, Dina, I think you said 147 days on orbit. For us, each and every mission is unique and meaningful here at SpaceX, and that certainly goes for Crew-10 as well. So Crew-10 represented a full circle of Dragon innovation and how collaboration helps make human spaceflight possible. This mission is truly the perfect example of human spaceflight being the ultimate team sport. Let me explain. So in March of 2019, we launched our first Crew Dragon demonstration mission, Demo 1, to the International Space Station with our zero-G indicator Little Earth on board. We've been flying cargo missions to ISS for many years already, but the intent of Demo 1 was to demonstrate SpaceX's capabilities to safely and reliably fly astronauts to and from ISS as a part of NASA's Commercial Crew Program. So it was a new configuration of Dragon with seats and consoles instead of cargo racks, and a brand new launch escape system to protect the crew on board in the event of any in-flight issues with the launch vehicle. And on board ISS at the time, awaiting Dragon and Little Earth, Crew Dragon's first passenger, if you will, was NASA astronaut Anne McClain, who had worked with SpaceX teams years prior to provide that critical crew perspective as we finalized the design. So she helped us with development. And then if you look on the NASA Flickr, you'll see tons of photos that Anne sent down to us during the Demo 1 mission of Little Earth tagging along as she put on her spacesuit and looked out the cupola window and drank her coffee from a pouch. And even as she exercised, I'm sure she's going to be embarrassed if she listens to this, that I'm talking about all this. But suffice it to say that it feels incredibly full circle now, that 10 operational human spaceflight missions later on behalf of NASA. And here we are welcoming her home from her most recent trip to space, this time on Dragon. And it was also our pleasure and our honor for Dragon to be the inaugural space flight for Nicole and Kirill, and to fly Takuya to the space station for the third time, this time being the commander of ISS. Moments like these never get old, and I look forward to hopefully flying all of you again in the future. Today's return this morning was nominal. Dragon is healthy. The parachutes performed as expected, as Steve said. This was the first West Coast recovery for our commercial crew mission after we moved Dragon recovery operations to off the coast of California earlier this year. So the crew is on their way home now, and soon the recovery teams will start to ready Dragon for its next flight. As mentioned during our post-launch briefing, we're already looking ahead to the launch of CRS-33 in just a couple weeks. It's targeted to be our 50th Dragon launch to the International Space Station. And if you can believe it, we've got our flight readiness review for that mission in a few days. I think it's on Tuesday. So no rest for the weary, although I would call the SpaceX team anything but weary. We're about as gung-ho as it gets to be a part of all this. But I look forward to talking to you more about the CRS-33 mission during that next briefing right before that launch. And I want to extend a huge thank you to everyone involved, NASA, JAXA, Roscosmos, and all the West Coast entities that helped support today's recovery operation and made it a safe operation. So welcome home, Crew-10. We're excited to have you back on Earth. And with that, I'll pass it to Kawasaki-san to share some words. And I just want to say it was an honor to get to know you better at the Crew-11 launch last week, and look forward to your opening remarks, Kawasaki-san.
Thank you, sir. My name is Kazuyoshi Kawasaki, Associate Director General of JAXA. I'm in charge of human spaceflight and space exploration. First, on behalf of JAXA, I'd like to express my sincere gratitude to all the leadership of NASA the excellent team who've been devoted to this mission. I really feel relieved to see the perfect return of Crew-Dragon that carried Anne, Nicole, Kelly, and Tapia safely and very smoothly. For Tapia, the delay due to the weather was good extra days, and I think he enjoyed these days so much. And Tapia completed his second long-term mission and returned safely to Earth. His total time spent in space is now 263 days. During his long stay, he said, bringing out the full potential of Kibo as his mission message. Under this message, he eagerly worked on Japanese experiment module Kibo to implement its experiment and the technical demonstration of Kibo. I think that the result of these experiments and the demonstrations will be extremely beneficial for the future life on the Earth and space exploration of the Moon and Mars. He did everything he could on the ISS as well as on Kibo. In addition, preparation for the communication system that is called PROX for the arrival of the HTV-X1 at the ISS were also conducted without any problem. HTV-X1 is the next generation cargo transfer vehicle to the ISS. And this, if HTV-X1 arrives at the ISS during another Japanese astronaut Kimiya Yui's stay, I believe that Kimiya will be capturing the HTV-X1, and I heard that he is eagerly looking forward to the capture. Takuya also actively engaged in public relation activities such as communicating with the Osaka Kansai Expo venue currently being held in Osaka, Japan, and engaging a scientific talk with the younger generation to the nature of the next generation of the talent. And I am confident that the Kimiya, who took over from Takuya and began his long stay and stay on the ISS, will achieve great results too. In addition, JAXA is currently preparing to launch the first HTV-X1 spacecraft from the Tanis Island, which will be delivered important surprise to the ISS. Going forward, JAXA will continue to work steadily with international partners and industries on the ISS, and further expand human activities and the development of the economic sphere in LEO. Through cooperation in the Artemis program, we hope to work together to expand exploration activity to the gateway to the Moon and beyond. Once again, congratulations on the successful return. Thank you. Back to Sandra.
Thank you to our briefers for those initial remarks. We're now going to open it up for questions on our phone bridge. Again, if you would like to submit your name for a question, you can press *1. Once your name is called, please do state your name, affiliation, and to whom you'd like to direct your question. And if you do feel like your question has already been answered, you can press *2 to withdraw it. Our first question is going to come from Will Robinson-Smith with Spaceflight Now.
Hi, thanks for taking the time to talk with us today, and congratulations on a good recovery. Question for Steve Stitch, just to clarify one of the points you made in your opening remarks. We heard one of the call-outs from SpaceX Mission Control of the crew concerning the 28-volt converter. Was that what you were referencing when you mentioned the converter connected to the water pump? And if so, what was the tangible impact of that being offline or in some way potentially compromised during the recovery? Thanks.
Yeah, good question. Essentially, there was no impact for having one of the two water ballast pumps down. Essentially, what happens post-landing is there's two redundant pumps that pump water into a bag that allows the CG of the vehicle to be more stabilized and make it a little bit more stable in the water. The teams are still looking at all the data. It looks like for some reason it was not drawing that one pump that did not, the data function wasn't drawing its power from 2 redundant power converters for some reason. So for some reason there was an issue with one of those power converters. We're not sure if it's related to that other call. I think it probably is, but we need a team to go sort through it a little bit. And that was one message that the crew got, that the SpaceX ground team did a good job of relaying information to the crew about. So hopefully I answered your question.
Thank you. Our next question is from Jeff Baus with Space News.
Good afternoon. Question for Steve and Dina. You mentioned the ongoing work to certify an extended stay for Crew Dragon at Space Station. At what point do you need to make a decision on how long Crew 11 will stay at the station in order to plan for Crew 12 and other station operations? Thanks.
Yeah, that's a good question. We think we have maybe a couple of months worth of work to do to look at all the data. As I talked about pre-launch, we had an extensive amount of work to do to extend the Dragon certification to 6 months. So I think we'll know, in the next couple of months whether it's feasible, and then what we'll do is just work with Dina and Dana and the station program and figure out when the right time is. Right now we're kind of looking already at a potential manifest as if we could extend the flight and laying out those manifests. But again, we can adjust if for some reason we don't get to the 8 months. Right now we feel pretty confident. We've flown one flight already at 7 months, and I'll see if Dina has anything else to add.
No, I'll just say, looking ahead to the spring, it's a matter of vehicle traffic and spacewalks and that essentially trying to deconflict everything. Otherwise, and right now, for example, we have a progress exchange that happens in late March, but we're still working on the dates. And we have some other vehicle traffic that we're looking at and a Russian spacewalk. So it's that sort of thing that we'll work around, but it's really, those decisions can be made a little bit later from that perspective.
Thank you both. Our next question is Ryan Catan with NASASpaceflight.com.
Hi, thanks for doing this. My question is for Sarah. Casting our minds back to last week, Crew 11 saw the final landing at Landing Zone 1. I'm just wondering if you have any timelines for getting new landing zones online at 39A or Pad 40. Thank you.
Hey, I'm so sorry. I have not been following along the latest on this. I do believe that lease runs out this year, and so we've been standing up other landing zone options, but I'll have to follow up with you on the specifics.
Thank you. Next up, we have Manuel Mazzanotti with Exploration Espacial.
Thank you. Manuel Mazzanti from Exploración Espacial. Along the previous questions regarding the potential extension of the mission, I'm assuming that will define when you can decide the NASA astronauts integrating Crew 12?
Yeah, I think we'll have an announcement, maybe in the next couple of months on who the Crew 12 astronauts are. I don't think it really has to do with the mission duration. We just need a little bit more time to release those, and so hopefully in the next couple of months we would be able to release the Crew 12 crew complement.
Yeah, I think actually looking at all the puts and takes, and what we're trying to do is make sure that we fully understand all the cargo that we have on board, everything that we're doing in the next year. We can make a decision even a little later than a couple of months from now. So I would just say, we'll be working closely, with our agency on that selection a little bit later this fall.
Thank you. Next up is Marcia Smith with SpacePolicyOnline.com.
Thanks so much for taking my question. I'm wondering what your current agreements are with Russia about crew swaps. How far into the future do those go? And did you make any new agreements when Bakanov was here about crew swaps or any other aspects of space station operations?
Well, first I'll address the second part of the question. We did have a good exchange between the two agencies and our cooperation, continuing on ISS. The crew exchanges, we're working on a future crew exchange agreement right now, but it has not yet been signed off by all the different parties involved. But we have, I believe it's out through the end of next year. We have that fully assigned and agreed to. And then we have a maybe philosophical agreement, and we're still finalizing the paperwork for an extension past that.
Our next question is from Micah Maidenberg with the Wall Street Journal.
Yeah, hi there. For Steve, maybe for Sarah, just curious if the shift in landing to the Pacific and kind of getting through the first recovery operation, are there any lessons to sort of glean for Artemis 2, which is, of course, coming up fast and would end with a Pacific splashdown? Thanks.